about the day that we chose for this subject. Something to do with relationships. We chose, as you saw on the flyer, the 88th anniversary of the Rebbe and Rebbetzin. Now, an anniversary, a wedding anniversary, like a birthday, is a very, very significant date in every person's life. And if that is important in every person's life, similar to every Jewish holiday that repeats itself, it's not just a date on the calendar. It's all the issues that are involved in that holiday, in a Jewish holiday, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, and so on. They bring along annually, over again, whatever the holiday had given to us the first time, and much more, because in holiness you can only increase. So that's significant for every individual. When we're talking about an anniversary of Nasi Hador, the leader of the generation, and in our case, it turns out to be that this is Nasi Kol HaDorot, this is the leader of all generations. It's a very, very significant date. And in connection to this day, the Rebbe once said himself, on his 25th anniversary, actually it was interesting, that Shabbos, those years, the Rebbe wouldn't make a fabring and a gathering every Shabbos, but the son of the person that was involved in the shidduch, in the match, decided to take advantage of the fact that his father was a little bit involved in the shidduch of the Rebbe. So he knocked on the Rebbe's door and the Rebbe asked him, what would you like? He said, I would like to collect a little bit of shatchanas money, as you call it, dmei shatchanut. How do you call it in English? Whatever. He wanted to...
Commission.
Commission. So the Rebbe says, yeah, what would you like? He says, I would like the Rebbe to make a fabring. The Rebbe agreed. And the Rebbe then, in that fabring, the Rebbe spoke a lot of very interesting things, quite unusual that he would speak about himself. And the Rebbe said a fact of that day. He says, this is the day that connected me and you, the Chassidim, and me to you and you to me. And I will, in Yiddish it goes, Zichalaych Mater. And Mater means I will make you work hard. And you're going to make me work hard. And together we will produce the Geula Shlema. It's not a simple task, but together it's going to be done. And I just happened to read this week a very interesting story about in the Tsar's army. The Tsar had millions of soldiers and known to be soldiers that extremely devoted, unique soldiers. And the Tsar was looking to create a new group called the elite, the very, very special soldiers. So he took them through many, many very, very tough trainings, and over time, the group dropped so much training, such hard things, that it dropped down to around 30 soldiers. They were considered to be, and before they were going to get their rank, they took them for the last test, as you call it, the last training. And this training was a real unusual one. They were supposed to run a couple of miles up to the top of the cliff, and they were instructed not to stop until you're told to stop. If you're not told, you have to continue. So they all started to run. These were soldiers that were trained for several years. They were running a few miles, and one by one, as soon as they came to the edge of the cliff and they were not told to stop, they stopped. No one jumps off a cliff. And there's only one Jew in the army over there, that he's the only one out of the whole 30 that runs and runs and runs and right over the cliff. What happened? He landed in a net. But everyone knew that he did not know that there was a net there. So they asked him, what was in your mind? He says, if the Tsar invested so many years in soldiers in general, and then he invested in us, these special soldiers, so many years and so much money, millions and millions of rubles, then we're going to fall down the cliff. He did it that we should end off and all dead? What's the point? There's no question that he had something behind. I didn't know what it was. But I just trusted him and I just went down. Basically, we're working on a goal. We're not just another generation that's coming and going. We were told, and this is a very special, unique time to connect and to take advantage of this day and to understand that we are in a very special generation. We have a very special leader. We are the end of all generations according to all signs. And we hope and pray that even before Rabbi Paltiel begins to speak, we should hear the sound of the shofar and the Geula Shlema. Go ahead.
Sit down. I'm free to go.
I'm sorry, I can't stay on that side. I can't handle the Wi-Fi.
Okay. Anyway, I have some, I made some copies for the things that I'm going to reference. I see, looking at this crowd, everybody probably quite familiar with these quotes, which just be helpful to have in front of you.
Yes, you're coming.
All right, good evening. Rabbi Abba has introduced the evening. He's speaking about something of great significance to all of us, and particularly in this particular day. So hopefully we'll get some insights, some inspiration, something I will carry and so on at the next stage. Speaking about marriage, we can't help but wonder. Marriage is still a mystery. People are still studying what is marriage about and how do you go about it. Reflecting on the fact that marriage started with the beginning of the world. Very first institution that the world has seen was marriage. Not only that, it was instituted by God Himself. Why the confusion? This is, this Chabad has Baruch Hashem. I see that quite knowledgeable people. Wherever you go, talk about marriage. Tell us how you establish a home. 5,000 years of experience, and discussing, and we're still at a loss. We're still in the dark. What's the reason for that? Usually when there is such an anomaly, there's a dude
had marriage, so they came. Sharon, no.
Zoom.
All right, for those who missed the first couple of sentences, I pointed out that despite the fact that marriage is probably the oldest human institution, which started at the beginning of time and has gone through all these thousands of years of experience and talked about and then lecturing and so forth, and yet everyone wants to hear. Tell us about language. Seems to be some kind of a mystery. And what is the reason that the human being must be so intelligent, and yet it comes to such a fundamental institution, totally part of his central of his life, and yet it can't make sense of it. And unfortunately, we know, as important as it is, and as central to a person's life as it is, and happiness, there are problems, unfortunately. And when problems occur, they are devastating. It's always going to be something most important when there is a problem. It reaches all the way down to the depth of life. Usually, when there is such a difficult process in resolving and finding some kind of clarity, it is due to the fact that you're looking in the wrong drawer. You're looking in the wrong source, wrong direction. And of course, you can go in circles forever and never realize, hey, you're going in the wrong direction. This is not what the answer is. In yeshiva, we used to discuss the following phenomenon. This is something that Mashpim used to introduce to us, and then we thought about it in all kinds of different ways. In olden days, Chassidim used to travel to the Rebbe. I'm sure being in this Chabad house, we know what that phenomenon is. Chassidim travel to the Rebbe. These journeys took quite some time, and they were sometimes very difficult journeys.
Flatbush doesn't take so much.
Huh?
Flatbush doesn't take so much time.
Especially if you had GPS. They had 2 horses saddled to a wagon, and generally this whole trip consisted of 3 sections. There were the horses, the wagon driver, and then the sitting in the wagon. If we would observe this whole scenario, the horses galloping at full force, the wagon driver sitting there up and he's working and pulling the horses. He's quite sure what he's doing. And then the Hasidim sitting in the wagon, and they are talking about it, they're thinking, they're projecting what's going to be. Which one of these 3 sections is more sure of itself? The horses. They're absolutely positive that they know what they're doing. And we used to say that the horses, what are they galloping? They believe that there's going to be hay at the end of this trip. So they're going to be served lunch. And they know exactly what that is. The wagon driver, he's sitting on top of this and watching and directing the horses. He's got in mind that at the end of this trip he will get paid, and he'll be able to raise his family, pay for rent, and so forth. The Hasidim in the back, so far we have no skepticism. The horses know exactly what to do. The wagon driver knows exactly what to do. The Hasidim in the kibbutz, they are being pulled along, and they are confused. They don't know what's going to happen. When are we going to arrive? Is there going to be a Farbrengen? Who are we going to meet there? And how well are we going to absorb what we are told? They are constantly preparing themselves for the eventuality of reaching the Rebbe and and being able to be prepared to absorb what they're given. Thinking about this, this is a very apropos synopsis of human thought. On many levels, taking it from on a general scale, a person needs food. When it comes to eating, he is quite clear as to what needs to be done. He needs parnosa. He needs to pay his way, so to speak. Again, there is a certain degree of clarity. Then there is a different phase of this thing, a different section, different category. That's the human category. What am I about? Here's the horse. He's a wagon driver. Who am I? Cutting, so to speak, the corners short, we'll come to marriage. I said marriage is something which we have 5,000 years of experience. When we think about marriage, we think on the most obvious and most clear reaction and benefit or effect of the marriage. Talking to people, talking to young men, marriage provides you company. Without marriage, you'd be lonely. Who's going to cook my meals? Who's going to pay for my food? This is the front section. This is the horses section. And we are not absolved, so to speak, from that section. It is conceivable, and unfortunately, when you get into it, you observe that such thing is possible. That some people, without proper education, proper enlightenment, they do build their marriages on the horse's philosophy. No matter how long that will go on, a generation 2 or 100, it will never give a meaning to marriage. A horse will never understand what a human being is. Then there is the middle section, comfort and convenience. security. This will be the second thing that rises in a person's mind. And this is where he begins to look for an explanation. First he looks for an explanation from the horse's perspective. It's most obvious. And as much as he investigates it, he doesn't find satisfaction. Then he looks for explanation from the coach driver perspective. And again, no matter what occurs, no matter how successful that section of life is, it's interesting. It's a historical fact, almost kind of counterintuitive, that in the British palace, in the British royal family, where there was missing nothing, anything lacking, there is such ferocious infighting. Nobody is happy. Sure, we are talking about Hebrew, but nevertheless, this is reflective of the human mind and the human psyche. So if we look for an answer to any human pursuit, any human value, certainly marriage, as we discussed, marriage is all-encompassing. We look for it in the first, in the most clear and most fully pursuable section. In the middle section, you'll always be disappointed. The answer must be in that little cabin. The very last in this entourage. They're not even aware the routes that are being taken. They're not involved in the whole trip. They are in a different world. The answer to the human dilemma, particularly of marriage, maybe surprisingly, lies in that cabin. The human being, we all know, is extremely versatile. He in fact encompasses the entire world. And so does marriage, which is a central aspect in human life, defined by his Creator. And in this, I'd like to go a little bit in the quotes that I make copies of. I'm sure it's not new to anybody, but the quote. I numbered these various sections. In number 1, Number one, it says, "Hayom Elokim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmei neged Muslim." I should translate, right? Every word? Yeah. Actually, there's translation, luckily, right next to the quote. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. And they shall rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and over the animal and the whole world." This gives us first insight. Now, who are we talking about? We're not talking about a horse, we're not talking about a coach ride. We're talking about a human soul that is in the likeness of God. And unless we address that soul, whatever we do, certainly in marriage, that encompasses the entire human being, the entire human life, we're going to be at a loss. You're going to be going in circles, and we're going to say, "Oh, you have to give gifts to your wife. That will make her absolutely happy. Don't forget the birthday. Don't forget the anniversary. Make the proper suppers for your husband. This will settle your home problem." This is the horses section. It will not do for the human being. With B'tzalmei neged Muslim, he's in God's God likeness. Whether we recognize it or not, but that is what really throbbing in a person's heart and a person's mind. And just to prove the point to ourselves, I wonder if anyone can tell me that a good lunch is more satisfactory than a good lecture, than a good learning session. A lunch is pretty good.
For some people, yes.
Excuse me?
For some people, yes.
For some people, yes. And some people can continue to grow for a whole lifetime. We are trying to point out that this is an error. And the error stems from the fact that I said the human being is his own company, lives in a big world. And he has to deal with the horses section, with the coach driver section, and with the cabin section. And the difficulty in finding a direction and a setting for marriage is that the first two sections camouflage. They hide the real issue. Just want to give you a little secret in my personal work. It's not a secret. I talk to couples all the time. When a couple comes to talk to you, they come because there's a problem. And this is going on for years. You discuss the problem and find some, transition. I'm not a therapist, a marriage therapist. I'm going to give you a human perspective. And usually that works. And the most common solution of the problem that I've seen that is more successful is I suggest you have a learning session together every day for 15 minutes or half an hour. Just sit and learn. Depending on your level of learning. But these days, with the type of literature that we have, you can learn anything easily. But I say, don't just skim over it. Don't let the husband tell you what it says. Read it together. Discuss it. And it changes the entire home atmosphere. It changes the entire relationship with the people. They are talking to each other like the people in that cabin. Not that the horses are driving to go to eat. They have something to discuss. They live with it. This is not what I came to talk about, but this is my experience. The most needed element in a home, in a Jewish home. And again, this is hidden down in the cabin, and we don't notice it. We notice the horses running. We know the cabin driver. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay my rent? And where am I going to get my pair of new shoes? The human being is a different creature than all the rest of the creation of the world. His primary description is that he is in God's image and in God's likeness. We do not necessarily understand what that means. But for one thing we know, that despite the fact that he lives in the world, and he also needs to eat, he also needs shelter, and all the things that are required to live in the physical world, he remains defined as God in God's image. His central element in which his mind and heart are centered to, where he is identifiable, where he can be proud of, where he can actually relate to, is what happens in that cabin. In describing the task, the purpose of creating this creature in this world, God said, why am I creating such a creature over here? It doesn't belong here. It's not part of the world's scene. Anomaly. So I'm going to read the number 2. The number 2 says, they shall rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky. This human being did not come here to be a citizen along with the horses. He is supposed to bring a different perspective to the world. He's supposed to rule over it. And then when you go to this third section, so we'll go. God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. What does that mean, subdue? You have to understand, these are not vain instructions. These are God's instructions to man. Which means that unless man recognizes the significance of these instructions, he's out of place. You can understand what he is doing here. He's got this phenomenal holy soul, this intelligence, and he's driving a wagon like the horses. Hipshuha, subdue it, means your job is to transform the world into your image. So this is the first instruction. Coming back to marriage, as we said before, the marriage has the full spectrum of human activity. There has to be food, there has to be shelter, there has to be comfort. And then there's also has to be the human element. But in all three of these sections, there is the element of kipshuah, of subduing it. Your job is, yes, you have to do the same thing. You have to eat, you have to have shelter. But this is not eating the same as the horse eats. Not eating just eating for the sake of eating. Like we have a very clear thing. Before you eat, the food has to be kosher. Pruvu, you have to multiply. This is not just to populate, but to keep sure. You have to have Taza Mishpocha. You have to bring, so to speak, the spirit from the cabin to bear upon the horses and upon the wagon driver. There's a story told about Shem Tov. Used to ride around a lot, also with a coach driver with the horses. And he would instruct the coach driver to turn around, let the horses run their own way. And the coach driver would turn around and he would join him in discussion. In Torah. Whatever the Baal was teaching. So despite that you were a coach driver, you were still, your function is keep sure. The function is to subdue the world. And unless we have that sense, that part of life, at all three sections, we are going to be basically miserable. Because our main defining element of who we are and what we are is lost. I want to go a little further when marriage begins to kind of service. This is a number 4. Okay. Again, as I pointed out, this is a totally godly, divine institution. Right on top of that page, number 4. I'm reading in English. Hashem, God said, it is not good that man be alone. I will make him a helper against him. That is a kind of an odd type of a plan. A helper against him. There's an interesting thought that comes when you read this sentence, this blessing. Up until that time, Adam was perfectly happy. He lacked nothing. He had no soul bias problems whatsoever. And it was God's interference in this coziness, in this happiness. And God said, you know something, this is not good. What's not good about it? This is God's statement. Going back to the Hebrew, but it's exactly the same thing I do in English. It's not good. It's not good. Looking at Adam, he's perfectly happy. What's not good? It is our main Musena element is not being employed. Is not being recognized. He's very good. He's doing the same thing that the horse is doing, and the wagon driver. Very happy. But that's not where he is. And that says, he says simply it's not good. You don't even have to explain why it's not good. It's a fundamental lack. It's not the real thing. It's not the human being. And then we'll go through these couple of quotes. Trying to find this helpmate in this world. Maybe we'll find somebody who can cook, who can wash the dishes and wash the socks. It says, Adam, who was so wise and so smart, and he was able to name every animal under the sun. I want you to understand, this naming of the animals that occurred at this moment was, yes, of a profound wisdom. Because by this function of naming, with this God retorted the protest of the Malachim. Malachim said, human being, what is that? Flesh and blood. So Hashem said, look at it. You don't have the wisdom that he has. Look how profound his wisdom is. He was able to look and identify every animal and get down to the bottom, to the center of his nature, and give it a name. That's what naming is. And because he was able to get down to the center of his nature and his function in the world, He was trying to identify, okay, maybe that's where I'm going to find a helpmate. But disappointingly, he says, no. For Odom, he did not find a helpmate. Instead, God has to perform the operation. Take a little piece of him, form into a helpmate, and bring her to him. And then Odom recognizes this is a helpmate. Because the union that this facilitates is not on the horse's level, not on the wagon driver's hand level, it's on the cabin. This is Etzem Yatzolah. This is of the same make, of the same material, of the same reality. Here we can join in at the true human level. I went back to the Hebrew just last and read the English of section 6. And the man said, this time it is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This shall be called woman, but from man was she taken. In other words, this is meeting the human being at the core of what the human being is. That part of the human being that is concealed, we don't notice. We notice when he's hungry. We notice when he's cold. We notice when he needs a pair of shoes. We notice when he's frustrated that he doesn't have the $1 million. That we notice. But what's throbbing deep down in his heart? What makes him tick? And what is that which starts his day? That we don't know. And this is where the Torah, again, addressing and utilizing Odom's, the human being's innate wisdom, we recognize this is the real thing. This is what it's all about. In other words, and this is where I want to kind of develop it a little bit, what is marriage? Marriage is that which can identify prior to as not good, and now it is good. Now I'm giving him a chance to be good, to have good. Because this union, this marriage, where he has an Ezer Kinegdoi. What is Ezer Kinegdoi? A helpmate against him. This is the literal translation. Against him means this Ezer will not be quieted, will not be satisfied by the horse's gift. Not even by the coach gift. You have to give me a human gift. There has to be a godly a godly element in this relationship. That is when it's going to be good. Because that is what other human being is. That human being we secreted over there in the last cabin, that you don't see, who does not jump ahead like the horses or like the wagon. They're sitting in quietly in the back and they're discussing and they're hoping that maybe something will open up. That is what the human being lives. He lives like this by the Rebbe, and he lives like this in his own home. And that is exactly what marriage is about. Marriage is Kipshua means, you say subdue it, Kipshua means capture. Marriage is what provides a human being his place in reality. The whole world was created for his sake. I always ask a question. We know that the world was created in 6 days. In reality, it was created in 5.5 days. Friday afternoon, before the afternoon, the world was complete. With all the variety, infinite variety in the world, whether it's animal, plant, or whatever, was already in place in the world. But there was no human being. A complete world, as we know it, the sun rising in the morning, and the moon following it. A whole world cycle. Beautiful. Let us project that. All of that is going on, but there is no human being. So then you want to think of it. What value is it? What does it stand for? What does this beautiful world stand for? When there is no, before the human being was created. Kipshuo does not mean subdue it. Kipshuo means bring yourself to bear upon it. Redefine the world in the spirit that you have. And that is what marriage provides. Marriage provides for a person to have a place in the world. A place which he can transform in his image. And bring his spirit to bear upon. Unless you turn around and start looking for the meaning and definition of marriage, in that cabin, it's going to be going in circles and be frustrated for 5,000 years. After 5,000 years of experience, he still says, please talk about marriage. There's obviously much to be discussed, much to be talked about in this vein. Just want to mention very briefly a few points in Jewish life. In Jewish life, the Gemara says that ish v'isha, a man and a woman, shalom b'neya, and there is peace between them. And the reason there is peace between them is because Shechina b'neya. It's because they recognized who they are. And their relationship is based on that spirit. And therefore their home is a host for the Shekhinah, for the divine presence. I had opportunity to speak, unfortunately, to Chassidic people. Mama's Chassidic people. I mean, Baruch Hashem, I see Chassidic people here around, but these were Chassidim who actually grew up in yeshiva. And never, there is discord in her life, there is discord in the home. How can I go back home? I said, you should know. Think about it. This infighting that you have in your home, in the presence of the Shekhinah, is tantamount to no less than a Chil Hashem. Everybody knows what a Chil Hashem is. Chil Hashem means the profaning of Hashem's name. Hashem has lent you his name. You are my people. It's American Muslim. And this is profaning that name. For those of us who are not familiar, Chil Hashem is one of the most serious transgressions in the Torah. In the Torah and in human life. Let's take, very briefly, I think our time is up, right? Is that correct?
No.
In simple human terms, what hurts more? An insult or a kick? Or a patch? You know what a patch is? A smack.
An insult hurts more.
Excuse me?
An insult.
And this all the time. And this is, I think, universal. Unanimous. I've tested this among different kind of groups. Of course it hurts more. Because the insult touches the spirit of the human being. The reason that we have such difficulty identifying marriage and bringing it together is because we're looking in the wrong direction. It's too obvious. The horses are running, they know what they want to do. The court driver knows what he needs to do. But these people in the cabin, they're hidden away, they're working inside their brain, inside their heart. And that is where the secret is really contained. This is what really defines human life, Jewish life, the Jewish home. marriage was conceived by the Creator of man, by God Himself. And God had this, He says, this creature, this man, is v'tzalmeni, is in my image, my form. I'm going to go a little bit specific, more a little deeper into that. I said before that at every level of relations, at every level of human life, there is that spirit of the cabin. When it comes to eating, food has to be kosher. When it comes to relating, it has to be ta'az mishpach. So you say, well, very important aspect of marriage, when I have children. So why do you make such a big fuss? You have children. The horses also have offspring. They also multiply. As a matter of fact, in the Torah, Hashem blessed all the creatures as Pru'uvu. He didn't say Pru'uvu and keep sure and capture the world, but he said Pru'uvu. But you have to understand there's a phenomenal difference. If I have that quote from the Posey, I think I do. Yeah. Okay, number 8. The last page in your packet. Very interesting, very significant aspect in the creation of man. God gives us also a view and understanding of what human procreation and relative handle of animal procreation. Let's read right on top of it, page 8, not page 8, the section what's marked over as 8. And Hashem God formed man of soil from the earth, and blew into his nostrils the soul of life, and man became a living soul. All animals are alive. In order that it's described, this is of enormous significance, both in terms of describing human life, and then a step further in reflecting what it means human procreation. Relative to the rest of the world. Animals are alive, but basically this is what's called living bodies. They're primarily body, but they are alive. The human being was given a soul independent of the body, which means that he is a soul in a body. And his central being, central orientation, is not his body, but his soul. This is what he relates to. This is most obvious in every aspect of human life. I can speak about it for hours because I always talk about this. Just to point out one very simple thing. A human being stands up. His soul is holding him up, not like an animal walks on all fours. Animal relates to the earth. Human being doesn't really do that. He is primarily soul, neshama, life. This is how he was defined. And this is where his central interest lies. And unless this is recognized in your life, regardless what you provide, how much hair you give him, and how much money you give him, he is going to be one miserable creature. Because this living soul is going to thirst to express itself, to be itself. At home, in marriage, God said, this marriage is based on this relationship, on this soul. And as I mentioned, the Gemara says, in a Jewish home, the Shekhinah dwells. Every Jewish home is a host for the Shekhinah. Based on this, we're going to come to the conclusion, just want to briefly, I always tell people, people come from marriage counseling, I say, I'm not a counselor. All I want is that you should understand what marriage is about, and you will use your own intelligence and find the right way to behave under these circumstances. Whatever occurs in the home, whatever discord, God forbid, the first consideration must be, what does the Shekhinah think about this? This is what this is all about. How do we resolve it without throwing the Shekhinah out of the home? That is the primary question. As I said, procreation, children, our procreation is not to procreate another body, but it is to bring the soul into the body, which is a separate activity, a separate accomplishment. As God the Torah says, at creation, the body was formed already. But then Hashem blew into his nostrils a soul of life. This is a direct presence, godly presence in his life. To accomplish that, you have to resort to what's going on in your mind and in your heart. This is not a bodily accomplishment, this is a soul accomplishment. Hence, we're all familiar with this, with the dealing of Taz HaMishpacha and purity in general in the relationship at home, and recognizing the presence of the Shekhinah at home. All that comes to bear, particularly on the soul and the spirit of the children. Lastly, and having talked myself out, I have to take the liberty to give us all a bracha. We should all be successful in building a beautiful Torah edifice, a Jewish edifice, with happiness on all scores. You mustn't be hungry. You can satisfy the horse, satisfy the wagon. Mostly pay attention to what's going on in our wagon. Everything has to start from there. The horse thinks that he's running because he needs food. The wagon driver thinks that he's driving because he needs to pay. The real truth is that they're all running there because they're at this. And because the people in the wagon are anxious to see the Rebbe. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Paltiel. First of all, I also want to hope that the Baruch should provide tons of hay, and so shouldn't have to worry with the horse. I also want to thank very much. Also, want to wish Rabbi Paltiel and his wife many years together. Forever healthy, gesund Yoram, and we should all have nachas from our children like Cass and his. So I also want to thank our dear host, Sayegh family, and together with all of you, I want to wish them. I see on the picture on the wall. They got a lot of men over here. And feminine power. Yaakov Avinu waited till he had a minion till he got his daughter. So Baruch Hashem and Baruch Hashem.
Does that mean how many? 10 boys, including my husband.
No, not you. He said Yaakov waited 10. You don't know Yaakov.
Okay. Excuse me, may I ask you a question? Sorry.
Should I take up this question? All right. So go back in session for a moment.
It's on.
It's not over.
What?
It's not over.
Not over. This is a challenging question. Let me read it as it is presented. What if one spouse is interested in that human element? Not interested. Isn't interested means it's not interested. In that human element.
In other words, only interested in the hay and then...
Only interested in the hay and the money. Whatever it is.
Afternoon.
The question is, what if one spouse is not interested in that human element? It is very difficult to answer this question, so to speak, on a general scale, blanketly. Because you have to deal with specifics. This spouse is not interested. From our perspective, from what we understand the human being is, it's an anomaly not to be interested. If he's not interested, what's behind it? It's inconceivable that this human being does not have a soul, does not have the capacity for this interest.
So how do you start it? Try to wake it up.
You should know the answer.
I'm helping you.
So I'm saying, this is to give, so to speak, a general direction is impossible because it has to be. It's very subjective. But what needs to be, the approach needs to be, this approach needs to be as follows. There is definitely a spark, a human spark, not a godly spark in this person. The question is two things. How did this spark get so deeply hidden? And how do we reach it? To retrieve it back. I want to tell you, among the experiences that I had, this spark to be deeply hidden does not necessarily mean that this person is sitting and watching movies the whole night, or walking the streets. I've seen, unfortunately, for various reasons, for various causes, where a person misguided, misinterpreted what was learned. All of a sudden you will find you lost that, you lost all life. There is an element, the most powerful element in the human, in us, in the human being, is what we call the will to live. You would think, hey, of course everyone wants to live. Not necessarily true, unfortunately. What's the secret behind the will to live? The will to live, again, the same as we said before when we discussed about marriage. This is not, I always mention this, there's an advertisement I once heard on the radio. I'm sure, I assume you also heard it. The best thing of waking up is put Folgers in your cup. Did you hear that? Substitute Folgers for ice cream, whatever it is. No, that is not what a human being is. How does it happen that he thinks that Folgers in your cup, that's what waking up is all about? It happens when he thinks, and unfortunately in our day, you know, the psychologists and the therapists, they're doing wonderful work, but they're missing a very important piece, a point. And in many things, in many aspects, they're counterproductive. They think that the will to live is rooted in the human being. The truth is, human being, the will to live is something which is given to him by his association with God. It's a godly gift on a constant basis. And unless one associates with that godly presence, with godly gift, he may lose it. This is not self-arousal. The human being, when he begins to search his mind, says, why should I live? He cannot find an answer. Unless Folgers.
What about grain?
This whole talk is for present company. Goyim is the truth is that Goyim translate this whole thing on a human level rather than on a divine level. And there you will find also inspiration. Human being, the Goyim, also inspiration to be a human being. But this is of a different, it's clearly on a different level. But if you ask the question, the answer is yes, there is a godly inspiration in the Goy, and this is why a Goy is capable to convert and become Jewish. Because there is a godly effect on the Goy also. He's not all horse, he's a human being. It is that you should understand that when this person says, and I'm interested in human element, and as I found it from the experiences, there's a cause for this. I have had all kinds of different scenarios for the cause, but the point is, just to quote the Tanya, I'm sure you're familiar with Tanya over here. The Tanya says that a person may lose a whole human spectrum, all the way up to the what's called Chochmah. The spark of Chochmah cannot be lost. And therefore, when a person says, I'm not interested, and if you have the time, if you have interest to deal with this person, you have to start talking and try to find where that Chochmah is hidden in this person. It's there.